Hello everyone, welcome to What If Naruto Became Alastor the Radio Demon Part 1. Before we start, please go support marioiale for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistaken character's gender, but of course Naruto is a male. Chapter 1. Walking through a forest was a 16-year-old teenager. The teenager had spiky blonde hair, pale skin, dull, stormy blue-gray eyes with slit pupils, though if one looked closely, they would see the bloodlust well hidden within them. 3 whisker marks on each cheek, wearing a black hooded raincoat, black gloves, black pants, and black combat boots. This teenager was Naruto Uzumaki, Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. The reason Naruto was walking through a forest was because he had just finished one of his games. This one was particularly disappointing. It only lasted 5 days, he expected it to last at least a week. If Naruto was honest, he was starting to get bored with his games. They had long since lost the joy and pleasure they brought him when he first started when he was 8. Oh, that first game always manages to bring a smile to your face. But now, his game has lost its challenge. The only reason he still plays them is because the game is now part of him. Also, recently, Naruto has started to feel something strange for the past few days, like he's being watched, which is strange, since he's usually the one watching people. As well as hearing voices in his head sometimes, which isn't strange given that he's been hearing voices in his head since that day, but this voice was different. Naruto, this way, follow my voice. There it is again. Naruto thought, stopping in his tracks, looking around before heading off in a different direction. Whoever it was, they obviously weren't in his head, meaning someone was communicating with him mentally, which should be impossible since the only people he knew who could communicate mentally were the Yamanaka clan. And for the last time he checked that they were all dead. So Naruto became curious that there was someone who could talk to him mentally. Besides, if nothing else, maybe this person can play my game. Naruto thought, smiling at the thought of having someone who could be a challenge. Naruto continued following the voice and soon came to a clearing where he saw a woman sitting on a rock who seemed to be waiting for him. The woman had long braided black hair, stormy gray eyes, fair skin, and was wearing some sort of armor Naruto had never seen before. Though what put Naruto on guard was the aura she emitted, one that radiated raw power, power that demanded respect. If Naruto cared about such things, he would think the woman was incredibly beautiful, more beautiful than any woman he had ever seen before or played with. Are you the woman talking in my head? Naruto said bluntly, not one to dance around words unless he was playing one of his games. The woman was momentarily stunned by his frankness, without waiting for him before compassing herself. Please sit down, Naruto, we have much to discuss, said the woman. I prefer to stand. Naruto dismissed, causing the woman to frown, unused to being dismissed like that, but she nodded. Very well. My name is Athena, goddess of wisdom, strategy, and battle. I am also your mother, making you a demigod. Athena revealed, Naruto stiffening as she said she was his mother. That's impossible, his mother was Kushina Uzumaki, the only person who loved him unconditionally, the person who died so he could live, and this little hitch dared to claim that she was his mother. Forget about a game that's cutting your throat right now. You're lying. Naruto whispered, his bowie knife sliding out of his sleeve into his waiting hand. No, I'm not. You may have seen my mortal form, Kushina Uzumaki. Athena said, her hair and eyes briefly flashing red and purple respectively. This made Naruto freeze. No, that's impossible. His mother is dead. She died protecting him from the Kyuubi's grasp. It's a trick, a complete trick, and he'll treat this woman the same way he treats everyone who thinks they can trick him. Killing them? If that's true, why are you here now? Naruto hissed, not really caring about his reasons, as he would soon die. I'm here because I'm going to bring him to my world as he will soon need your help to face a grave threat. Athena said. What makes you think I'd help you with anything? Naruto growled, his eyes turning red as he felt a familiar thrill just before plunging his sword into a warm body. Athena frowned at this. This wasn't going as she had expected. She had thought her son would be overjoyed to know she was alive and would welcome her with open arms and commit to whatever she needed as her son. Well, it's true, he is more naive and not as intelligent as her other children, from what she saw of him in his younger years, though she should have expected as much given that he grew up as an orphan, with no one to teach him properly. Naruto, you're just one of a much larger family, and they need your help. Athena said, thinking that would convince him to join her in meeting the rest of her siblings. However, this only increased his anger, because she had other children, whom she apparently cared about more than him. And she thought he would actually help them. Not only was she stupid, but she was delusional. Naruto was more likely to end their miserable lives one by one. You have the impression that I will go anywhere with you. Naruto said. I'm sorry, my son, but you have no choice. Close your eyes, Athena said, feeling not the slightest remorse. Right after we see if gods bleed. Naruto thought, preparing to slit her throat. However, before Naruto could raise his knife, Athena began to glow brightly, forcing him to shield his eyes. When he opened his eyes, he found himself in a completely different forest. What? Naruto shouted, looking around angrily. Go that way, you'll soon reach a place called Camp Half-Blood. Now I must say goodbye before my father notices I'm gone, Athena said, glowing, forcing Naruto to shield his eyes again. Who the hell do you think you are? Naruto yelled. Athena thought her son was quite bold to speak to her like that before disappearing back into Olympus. Once the flash disappeared, Naruto growled in anger. If that hitch thought he would do anything she said, she was completely wrong. Turning in the opposite direction from the camp his mother told him to go to, he contemplated going there if only to kill anyone he found there. But not first. He needs to learn everything he can about this seemingly alternate world. Though amidst the anger he felt, Naruto couldn't help but smile evilly. Perhaps this new world might prove more challenging than his own. He supposed he could thank his mother for that, just before killing her. First things first, learn everything you can about this world, then plan your best game yet. Time skip 7 years. A month had passed since the Second Giant War, and the defeat of Gia and the demigods of Camp Half-Blood and Camp Jupiter sprang into action. The new alliance between the Greek and Roman demigods had caused a stir in their world. The monsters scattered, barely recognizable, and the demigods took advantage of this opportunity with all their might. The demigods from both sides worked together to create a nation of sorts. They built a city near Camp Half-Blood called New Greece and began building forts and settlements across the American nation. Companies opened trade, and a new nation was built in less than 3 years. The demigods even managed to build a citadel in Alaska. The united camps on both sides had even made the Olympians act more mature, with Zeus agreeing to allow the gods to help build this nation. But like all nations, leadership was required to maintain order and balance. So, a group of the most powerful demigods created what was called the Demigod Council, which oversaw the protection of the demigod republic in Olympus. The council consisted of the most powerful and oldest living demigods, including Percy Jackson, Jason Grace, Annabeth Chase, Piper McLean, Leo Valdez, Frank Zhang, Hazel Levesque, Dahlia Grace, Reina Arellano, Nico D'Angelo, and the oldest, and some considered the greatest, demigods, Kai Jin and Master Ambrose. Although the council did not make the laws or rules, they merely enforced them. The gods still had that duty, and Hermes would report any updates to the council. Since the Republic was formed, things have been going very well for all the demigods, and the gods and demigods call it their golden age. With the council doing an excellent job of maintaining peace and order. That is until recently. Recently, several demigod settlements have been hit by a series of strange murders. Normally, this wouldn't be a cause for concern, as most people think it was just some monsters brave enough to attack and kill some demigods before being sent back to the underworld. That is, if the cause of death was actually caused by monsters. When all the bodies were found, it was proven that the wounds were caused by a weapon, a knife, to be specific, not by claws, teeth, or even by being gouged. So whoever was committing the murders wasn't a monster. At first, the council didn't get involved, believing the militia from the first settlement attacked could handle it, until they found 5 more bodies, all in different settlements. With this, the council became more involved in investigating the murders. At first, they found 2 or 3 bodies a week, then they began finding 8, then 12, until after 2 months they found 75 dead demigods in several different settlements, all Roman or Greek. The council had no choice but to announce that there was a serial killer on the loose. This, of course, spread fear throughout the Republic, prompting the council to enact its emergency powers. Emergency powers were granted to the council by the gods to use in times of war or great crisis. The council enacted a curfew in all settlements, ensuring that all demigods traveled in groups of at least 3, and providing ways to quickly summon help or report suspicious activity. Currently the council was meeting in the temple, which had been designed by Annabeth with the help of Athena and Zeus. The temple had several rooms, the first being the war room for planning attacks and defenses, which was never used since monsters no longer attack demigods. The library and archives, which house all the books from the Greek and Roman libraries, the training halls for young demigods with different classes depending on what they want to be, whether fighters, healers, builders, or communicators. The hangar where Leo and other children of Hephaestus and Vulcan build jets, airplanes, and ships to facilitate the demigods' transportation. Finally, there was the council chamber, a large circular room with 12 chairs around a large table, each chair designed for a specific council member. Ai's seat was a mixture of ancient Roman stones, along with symbols from the Chinese language, as well as animal symbols engraved on it. His main symbol on his chair was a katana, which showed his mastery with swords and the ninja fighting style, as well as samurai mastery. Ambrose's seat was smaller than the rest, which had ancient symbols and Greek stone mixed with some wood, and had stars and comets showing his knowledge of space. His main symbol was a staff which showed his mastery of magic and the power of spells. Alia's seat was made of wood and had animal hides that shone like the moon, with silver metal gleaming in the light. It had animal symbols, as well as stars and constellations. Her symbol was a bow within a moon, showing her mastery of the bow and her loyalty to Artemis as her deputy. Reina's seat was made of Roman stone with images of swords and shields inside it, as well as purple banners flowing from the sides, and the letters SPQR engraved on it, as well as symbols of wings and a Pegasus on it. Her symbol was a sword with the letters SPGR engraved on it, showing her leadership abilities and loyalty to Camp Jupiter and New Rome. Frank's seat was made of Roman stone mixed with some Greek, with a boar engraved on its side with a bow and spear engraved as well, along with purple banners with SPQR, which had swords and shields decorated. Their symbol was a symbol of a man mixed with a bear, a bird and a wolf, showing their shape-shifting ability and their leadership skills. Leo's seat was made of different metals, celestial bronze, imperial gold, Greek and Roman stone, and had symbols of a dragon, for Festus, and a warship, for the Argo too, engraved as well in some flames. His main symbol was a forge and hammer, showing his mastery of blacksmithing and craftsmanship, and his control over fire. Hyper's seat was made of Greek stone with musical note symbols, as well as roses and doves, but not only did it have symbols of daggers and a lightning bolt throwing a heart and a Cherokee symbol, her main symbol was a heart with musical notes around it, with a dagger inside, showing her charm ability and her skills with a dagger. Hazel's seat was made of gems and jewels, with Roman stone and gold, silver, and all other rare valuables. Her main symbol was a ghost with fog surrounding it, with gold coins at her feet, representing her ability to control the mist, her connection to Pluto, and her ability to summon gems and jewels from Earth. Jason's seat was made of imperial gold with Roman stones, and had some purple and orange banners flowing from it, as well as lightning bolts and storm clouds. His chair had a blue color, and also had a sword and shield symbol. It also had a wolf symbol as well as a peacock symbol, showing his position as champion of Juno and Hera. His symbol was over a lightning bolt with a sword, showing his ability to control lighting and fly, as well as his position of being the son of Jupiter. Annabeth's seat was made of Greek stone and also Roman stone with symbols of books, owls, swords, and shields. She also had the symbol of a trident for her relationship with Percy on her seat, as well as a lightning bolt and an image of the Golden Fleece for her participation in the quests The Lightning Thief and Sea of Monsters. She also had an image of Athena Parthenos that she had recovered herself. Her symbol is an image of an owl with a dagger in its talons. As well as a building in the background showing her position as the architect of Olympus and her loyalty to her mother Athena and her power as a warrior. Percy's seat was like a relaxed seat made of Greek stone and wood with symbols of fish and dolphins, as well as a trident with waves and swirls around it. It had Atlantean steel engraved on it along with the symbol of an owl for his relationship with Annabeth and a picture of a cookie for the blue cookies his mom makes him. On its side, there was also a picture of a Pegasus next to a hellhound for his two companions Blackjack and Mrs. O'Leary. It also had a fishing rod along with a cyclops eye with a picture of the Empire State Building and the word Camp Half-Blood. His main symbol was a trident whose center point was a sword, showing his current position as the greatest swordsman alive in the last 300 years and the son of Poseidon, as well as the hero of Olympus. Finally there was Niko's seat which was made of black Greek stones with Stygian iron and had images of ghosts, shadows, swords and skulls along with skeletons, an image of a scythe with the helm of darkness and Cerberus with the symbol of a hellhound, the symbol of the Furies. The seat also had bones added to its sides with a seal of Pluto, showing his position as an ambassador of Pluto. It also had an image of a girl with a bow, her hair braided back with the word Sorella underneath it. For his fallen sister Bianca, his main symbol was a skull with shadows around it, with rubies inside the eye sockets, along with a sword through the skull, showing his powers of death and shadows, and as a child of Hades. Currently, all 12 council members were present, while on the table were files of all of his killer's victims. Most of the bodies were found lying around. The killer didn't even bother to hide them, but there were also some bodies displayed in what were supposed to be public places, as if the killer wanted to show everyone that he was particularly proud of them. It disgusted everyone that someone would be so twisted as to hang bodies on display. So, what do we know so far? Percy asked, rubbing his head. They've been here for hours discussing any connections between the victims, where they were found, and what settlements they lived in. All the victims were found in different settlements, maybe 7 or 8 in each one, before there is a lull of at least 3 or 4 days before more bodies start falling again. 65 of the victims were demigods, the other 10 were satyrs or nymphs. 10 were children of Hermes, 15 of Aphrodite or Venus, 5 of Hephaestus, 4 of Ares, 6 of Demeter or Ceres, 10 of the Roman and Greek versions of Apollo, and 15 are of unknown parentage. Kai said in a growl of his voice. I was a tall Chinese man with scars all over his body. He had tanned skin along with dragon and katana tattoos on his body. He had no hair, and one of his eyes was scared out from a battle with a hellhound. He always carried his katana wherever he went and wore dark brown monk robes and sat with an air of power and confidence. The council members whose parents were called looked on with sadness at the death of their brothers. What about strangers? Hazel asked. We don't know that the bodies were cut in two to identify any defining characteristics, Ambrose responded sadly to all the deaths. Ambrose was small, smaller than a child, but he looked old beyond belief. He had a long white beard that reached his chest and carried a wooden staff. He also had green eyes that shone with years of knowledge. His robes were very similar to Case's, but instead of being brown, they were a tan. Alia, are you or any of the hunters able to find any clues or tracks left by the killer, anything that might give us a lead on them? Jason said, looking at his sister, who clenched her fists. No, whoever it is knows how to cover their tracks and their scent. Thalia said, annoyed, finding it insulting. None of the hunters could find even a clue as to who the psychopath was doing this. The only thing left behind is this, Leo said, pointing to a drawing found at every crime scene. An image of a gruesome mask, drawn in blood. It reminded everyone of the Ghostface mask, only darker and more organic. Everyone assumed that must be what the killer used to hide his identity, not that it mattered, since anyone who saw them doesn't live long to tell anyone, and they've never even had a picture. Who was this maniac? Then. Annabeth groaned as she closed the door to Percy's apartment. She and Percy had both moved to the town surrounding the temple, since it would be easier than traveling there. It also helped that a perfect replica of the new Rome school was built there. The apartment was a decent size for 2 people with a kitchen, a living room, a second floor with a bedroom, a bathroom, a balcony with a city view, a spare room, and a dressing room. What? She may not be the daughter of Aphrodite, but she's still a girl who loves shopping for clothes. The meeting had lasted an hour before it ended. Percy and most of the others decided to stay behind to try to find some connection between the murders. The only ones who left were Thalia, Jason, Piper and Nico. As she climbed the stairs, Annabeth entered the spare room where a large board was posted with dozens of posts and pictures. This was all she'd managed to gather about the murders, wanting to do her own research. There were photos of all the victims with their godly parents, where they lived, and in the center, there was a photo with a question mark and the word murder above it, along with the mask symbol seen at crime scenes. Who are you? Why are you doing this? Annabeth thought, biting the cap of a pen. Call it the Athena in her, but Annabeth wanted to solve this crime on her own, if only to discover the killer's motive. Annabeth then turned her attention to the wall where the pictures of the 15 unknown demigods hung. This one really caught Annabeth's interest, as these 15 demigods were all the ones found on display. Not only that, but the reason they couldn't be identified was because there was nothing to identify them. Fingerprints were hacked beyond recognition, teeth were knocked out or crushed, faces were slashed, all blood was contaminated with bleach, and eyes were gouged out. Why go to the trouble of making these 15 unidentifiable, which makes them different from the rest? Annabeth thought. She had 2 theories. The first was that the killer had a grudge against these specific demigods and wanted to show it through acts of cruelty. The second was that the demigods had the same godly father and the killer went after their godly mother-father by chasing the children and cut them into pieces so they couldn't tell whose children they were. Annabeth was brought out of her thoughts when she looked more closely at the victims and saw some similar characteristics. They all had slightly muscular bodies, probably from working out every day, but not like the swimmers the children of Apollo had or the muscled ones of Ares, but enough to show they weren't pushovers. The second was his hair, honey blonde, the same shade as hers, Annabeth thought, grabbing a strand of her hair. And she was sure that if they still possessed her eyes, they would be a stormy gray. But Annabeth thought. Before he could continue his train of thought, he heard the front door open. Percy? I thought you were staying at the temple with the other one. Annabeth said, receiving no answer, confusing her. Percy? Annabeth called and still hasn't received a response. Freezing when she heard footsteps coming down the stairs, Annabeth grabbed the bat from the room, since she didn't have her knife with her. Slowly leaving the room, Annabeth looked around and slowly made her way down the stairs, peering over the banister, seeing nothing out of place, though she gulped when she saw the front door wide open. Taking a chance, Annabeth ran downstairs and quickly locked the door, breathing a sigh of relief. Ring. Ah. Annabeth yelled, looking around before realizing it was her cell phone. Taking it out, Annabeth saw that it was a stranger calling. Annabeth confused answered. Hello, said Annabeth. Hello. Yes. Annabeth asked. Who is it? Who are you trying to contact? Annabeth questioned, wondering if this person was out of their mind or just one of those weird fanatics. What number is this? Well, what number are you trying to get to? I don't know. Well, I think you have the wrong number. Annabeth said. It happens, take it easy. Annabeth said, hanging up. That was weird, Annabeth thought, preparing to go back upstairs. Ring. Oh, hi, Annabeth said. Sorry, I guess I dialed the wrong number. So why did you dial it again? Annabeth asked. Apologize. You're forgiven. Goodbye now, Annabeth said, eager to hang up. Wait, don't hang up. Why? Annabeth questioned, wondering why he hadn't hung up yet. I wanted to talk to you. Well, I'm sure there are numbers for that. See you around. Annabeth said, hanging up before the person could say anything else with a sigh. Ring. Really? Annabeth thought. Hello, said Annabeth. Why don't you want to talk to me? Who is it? Annabeth asked. Tell me your name, I'll tell you mine. I don't think so. Annabeth said, now starting to get nervous. Come on, talk to me, I promise I won't bite. Okay, what do you want to talk about? Annabeth asked. What do you like to watch? Not Game of Thrones scandal, Annabeth said, walking. How to Get Away with It. Yeah, that's pretty good, I guess. Annabeth said, looking toward the stairs. I like a strong female lead, you sound pretty strong yourself. I feel sorry for anyone who tries to attack you. Don't even joke about that. Annabeth said, not finding it funny with all the killing going on. Sorry, what else do you like? Comedy, horror? It's definitely not horror, real life is scary enough these days. I hardly sleep anymore, Annabeth muttered. You look tired. This made Annabeth freeze, looking at her phone, starting to freak out. What? Annabeth said. You sound tired. Annabeth looked around before seeing an open window and walked quickly towards it. Who are you? Annabeth said. Oh, no one important, just a fan. Annabeth pushed the window down and closed it, facing out. What you should really be asking is, did you just lock me in or out? Annabeth quickly turned around, gripping her knife tightly. If you're here, I swear to the gods I will. Are you going to what? Are you going to try a little batting practice with me? Yes, you're right, I will. I have to find myself first, and I could be anywhere. I have your number, we'll find you, Annabeth said. Of course, they'll reach a nice, confused man named Arden Maine. And no one will arrive in time, so I suggest you talk. To me. What do you want from me? Annabeth asked. To show you the truth, Annabeth, about who you really are, and believe me, it's going to hurt. You don't even know me. Denied Annabeth. But I do. And that's the real horror show, I know everyone is lying to you, using you. What are you talking about? Annabeth demanded. You're two-faced friends, you're fraud of a family, you're hitch of a mother. It all started with his Annabeth, but it's going to end with you. We'll find that nice little family in San Francisco. See you soon. But that person, the killer, Annabeth knew. She hung up. Annabeth took a deep breath, looking around before hearing a bang upstairs from her murder board. Annabeth ran upstairs and gasped at the sight of the entire room destroyed, papers lying everywhere, shredded. Annabeth looked around in fear before seeing something pinned to the wall. As she looked closer, she saw it was a photo of all the council members and Olympians, taken after the temple's completion. Death is too swift. So tell me, daughter of Athena, what is the most common crime committed in Greek mythology? Chapter 2. Naruto smirked as he put his cell phone on his back after mentally torturing Annabeth, his mother's so-called favorite daughter. She has a special place on his list to destroy Athena. Closing his eyes as his clone's memories returned. Shadow clones make the game much easier by being in separate places at the same time. Naruto himself was heading to another demigod settlement after having finished tormenting another one enough, and he must say he'd never felt more alive. Well, these demigods aren't as skilled or powerful as the ninja he killed back home. This world has opened up many more possibilities for their games. In the elemental countries he could only stalk his prey and leave threatening notes. Now he can contact them directly, make them nervous about where he is, make them paranoid about who he might be. It was all so exciting. Especially with the hunters, a group of young immortals in service to Artemis, goddess of the hunt, the moon, childbirth and chastity, and one other person on his list. He'd already encountered some hunters, killed them. Of course those were the bodies he made sure weren't found without wanting an angry goddess to come after him, yet. If he remembered correctly, he'd killed 12 hunters. How he wished he could kill the rest, but not first, he had to take care of Artemis first. And his lieutenant. Naruto thought distractedly, bringing a hand to his neck where an arrow had cut it. While thinking, Naruto remembered the first kills he made in this world. Flashback. Naruto growled in annoyance after walking for almost an hour. His mother's dog apparently found it funny to drop him in the middle of a forest at night, just another reason to kill her. Then he heard one of his favorite sounds, as it usually comes from screams, teenage laughter. Smiling as he lifted his hood, Naruto moved forward and soon found a campsite with a tent and a dying fire. At 10, he could see 2 figures inside. Perfect. Naruto thought as he looked down before finding a decent-sized rock. Picking it up, Naruto threw it like a tree and saw the shapes jump a little at the sudden sound. Naruto was still too far away to hear what they were saying, but he saw one of the 10 people get up and walk out, showing a male teenager wearing only pants, causing Naruto to roll his eyes. Of course, hormonal teenagers. He thought Naruto was starting to think they just didn't have survival instincts. Hello, anyone out there? The guy shouted. Yeah, scream as loud as you can, not knowing who can hear you. Naruto though sarcastically. This time, purposely stepping on a twig, breaking it, Naruto ducked into the shadows as the guy started walking towards him with a flashlight in his hand. Someone there? Said the guy waving the light. When he found nothing, he shrugged and turned to head back into the tent. But when he did, he gasped at the sight of Naruto standing behind him. Before he could make another sound, Naruto's knife was buried in his throat. Naruto watched with pleasure as the boy tried to stem the flow of blood to save his own life, though Naruto knew it was useless to make sure he hit the carotid artery. He made sure to study human anatomy before committing his first murder, so he knew what to hit to ensure his victims could call for help. Within seconds, the teen had bled out, making Naruto smirk before turning his attention to the tent where the other was. One down, one to go. Naruto thought. Walking toward the tent, Naruto heard the girl talking, thinking he was her boyfriend. When she didn't respond, Naruto walked around the tent, listening to the girl's heartbeat increase as she walked away from him. Then, without warning, Naruto plunged his still blood-stained knife into the tent, intentionally missing the girl. The effect was instantaneous. The girl screamed and ran out of the store. "I love it when they run," Naruto said as he started walking in the direction the girl ran off in. He walked calmly, not even worried about the possibility of the girl escaping, as he would catch her, plus he discovered that if he keeps a calm facade, his victims will be even more terrified when he finally catches them. Naruto soon found the girl in a large metal contraption with 4 wheels. It vaguely resembled the trucks in Snow Country, only smaller, so he assumed it served the same function. The girl, too busy trying to start the vehicle, didn't even notice Naruto moving next to it before crashing through the window and screaming. He then wrapped his hand around her throat and began choking her. Naruto stood there humming idly as if he wasn't already strangling someone to death as the girl clawed at his hand. He would think it was funny if he hadn't dealt with the same thing a few dozen times already. He then felt a puncture on his glove. Looking over, he saw that the girl tried to stab his hand with a nail file. This would have worked if her gloves and the rest of her clothing weren't lined with protective seals to prevent such things from happening. He's really boring now, Naruto thought, twisting his wrist. Break. The girl's head went limp in his grip when he let go. Flashback ends. He then burned the bodies and the camp. He didn't want anyone to start hunting for a killer just yet and took the victim's money and car keys. He then headed to New York after an hour of self-taught driving and created several dozen clones, which he sent to the library to learn everything he could about the world. In just 3 days, he learned the entire history of the world, as well as learning that Athena was a Greek goddess, meaning the other Greek gods and goddesses were also real, along with the myths and legends. Naruto also surmised that if the Greek gods were real, then there must be other pantheons. Then, for 7 years, Naruto traveled, planned his game, killed some people, and created a weapon that he could use to permanently kill gods. Now, after years of plotting, he's finally put his plan into action, and when all is said and done, he'll be the last one standing, while all his enemies will lie dead at his feet. And Athena will wish she'd never set foot in the elemental countries. Time skip 9 days with Annabeth. Annabeth ran through the forest looking around in fear. All around her she could hear a demonic laughter that followed her no matter which direction she ran. He suddenly stopped and screamed when he saw Jason and Piper impaled on a tree with a spear. Turning to the other side didn't help when he saw Leo's burned corpse on the ground, then Reina had been cut into pieces, Hazel with her heart ripped out, Frank's severed head, Nico with his throat slit, Thalia riddled with arrows, and finally the one that hurt the most was Percy with Riptide stabbed in the chest. No, please, gods, no. Annabeth begged to get away from her friends' corpses, her boyfriend's tears streaming down his face. Though it soon became something that made her paler with fear, Annabeth became shaky and gasped when she came face to face with the killer. Before she could utter a single word, the killer plunged the knife into her chest. "One by one, everyone you care about will die," the assassin said before twisting the knife. Suddenly, Annabeth opened her mouth and woke up looking around, finding herself on a plane with Percy looking at her with a worried expression on his face. It was just a dream, not a nightmare. Annabeth thought her fears didn't fade, knowing that the dreams of demigods were never just dreams. Whatever it was, Annabeth knew she had to keep it to herself, remembering the killer's warning that if she told anyone about their conversation, he would kill her family. "Annabeth, are you okay?" Percy asked, seeing the fear in her eyes. Yeah, fine seaweed brain, just a bad dream," Annabeth said. Percy nodded slowly. Annabeth then thought about the events of the past 9 days since the killer called her. The council had received reports of the most recent murders in the Anima settlement, a settlement built on the coast of Canada. They all agreed to send 3 council members to try and find the killer before he leaves in hopes of eventually capturing or killing him. The members chosen to go were Annabeth, Percy, and Thalia. Thalia was currently trying to distract herself from being on a plane, while Percy and Annabeth were simply waiting to land. Soon everyone felt the jet land, showing they had arrived, with Thalia running instantly grateful to be back on solid ground, Percy and Annabeth following in a more relaxed mood. Waiting for them was a teenager with short blonde hair, lightly tanned skin, blue eyes, wielding a bow and arrow. The 3 of them could tell he was a son of Apollo by his appearance. "Are you the leader of the militia?" asked Percy. "That's me, Jake Acosta, son of Apollo," Jake said, extending his hand, which Percy shook. "So, what can you tell us about the murders?" Thalia questioned after calming her nerves. It happened about 5 days ago. Some demigods were out jogging when they called to report a body in the river. When we got there, we saw that it was badly cut up. The cause of death was several stab wounds between the ribs and punctured lungs. The body was also waterlogged, showing that the killer had thrown her into the river after killing her. Since then, we've had 3 more deaths. Jake said sadly, the 3 council members nodding. Anything else? Annabeth said, hoping no one would notice her stuttering. Only there are a lot of demigods terrified of being next. Jake said. Alright, thanks Jake. We'll take it from here. Percy said. Jake nodded. If you need anything else, come to the station or ask one of the patrol officers, Jake said, waving as he returned to work. So, what's the plan? Thalia questioned. Okay, Thalia, go to where the bodies were found to see if you can find a trail. Annabeth, go to the motel room and see if you can find anything where this guy is hiding. I'll ask around to see if anyone has seen anything suspicious. Percy said, both of them nodding to Annabeth more slowly. Soon the 3 separated to complete their chosen task. But Thalia. After obtaining the location of the most recent body, which luckily was found last night, so any traces would still be fresh, it had been nailed to a tree. Frowning, Thalia looked around and saw blood still staining the tree where the body had been, along with the same red mask painted on it. Then Thalia noticed something on the ground. Bending down, Thalia brushed off some dirt, lifting her fingers and finding them stained with blood. Looking ahead, she saw drag marks on the ground as if something had been dragged across the floor. It looked like someone had tried to cover them up in a hurry. So, they weren't killed here. The killer took their body here, or maybe somewhere else, but didn't make it and had to get rid of it. The only question is, why take the body somewhere? Thalia thought that, according to the autopsy reports, none of the bodies were cut beyond recognition or mutilated. So why would the killer bother moving the body? Pushing those thoughts away for now, Thalia stood up and began following the drag marks, likely to where the demigod had been killed and hopefully something she could use to track down the killer. Although as she walked through the forest, Thalia couldn't shake the feeling that she was being followed. She grabbed her bow and nocked an arrow just in case. Thalia looked around for any movement when something strange happened. What? Where did this fog come from? Thalia thought as she saw a cloud of fog appear seemingly out of nowhere. Break. Spinning around, Thalia aimed her arrow where she heard a twig snap, but saw nothing. Then she saw something move from around the corner and instantly turned and released the arrow, only to hear it hit a tree. Thalia quickly drew another arrow and looked around. She could hear someone running through the fog, but she couldn't see them. Thalia gulped and began to feel nervous. Usually, if she was hunting monsters, it was easy to tell where they were and how they acted, but this was a completely different kind of monster. Okay, idiot, you've had your fun now, how about you get out before I fill you with holes? Thalia yelled as she heard a whisper of air before hissing in pain. Bringing her hand to her cheek, Thalia felt blood trickle from the cut and paled slightly. Looking over, she saw that the cause of the attack was a strangely designed knife with a ring at the base of the hilt, a kunai, Thalia thought it was called. Now Thalia was starting to get scared and realized what kind of lunatic she was dealing with. This was all a game to him. Putting away her bow, Thalia pulled out her hunting knives, which sparked with electricity. Hey. Why don't you come out and fight instead of hiding like a coward, unless you're afraid to fight me head on? Thalia mocked, hoping that would attract the assassin. It worked as Thalia felt a presence behind her, and Thalia quickly turned face to face with the assassin, causing her to gasp. Before she could utter a word, the assassin grabbed her by the neck and lifted her into the air. Gasping, Thalia dropped one of her knives and grabbed the assassin's arm around his throat in an attempt to rip his hand off. Well, said assassin simply bowed his head. In an effort to make them let go, Thalia plunged her other knife into the assassin's arm, making sure to charge it with electricity. But to her surprise, the killer didn't even flinch at the knife in her arm before turning back to her as if to say, really? He snatched the knife from her hand and removed it from her arm, tossing it aside. What the hell are you? Thalia gasped. In response, the killer banged his head against a tree, knocking the hunter unconscious. But Annabeth sat in the motel room and looked at several maps of Anima, searching for a place where the killer might be hiding. The only places she could guess were the woods or the warehouse district by the docks. Although if Annabeth was honest with herself, she would rather be back at the temple where she felt at least somewhat safe. Now out here, where the killer was, she felt exposed, like she was being constantly watched. Annabeth jumped a little when her phone rang and looked at it in fear, before shakily grabbing it when she saw it was an unknown person. What do you want? Annabeth said. Ah, what's wrong? You don't seem happy to hear from me. And I thought you came all the way here to see me, that really hurts Annie. Be careful not to hurt my feelings. I might have to hurt your little hunter friend. Those words made Annabeth freeze in horror. The killer had Thalia. Where is she? Annabeth demanded, afraid of what she would do to her friend. She's safe for now. And if you want her to stay safe, I'll have to do something for myself. How do I know you really have her? Annabeth said, hoping the killer was bragging about having Thalia. In response, her phone buzzed, showing that the killer had sent her a message. Annabeth saw that it had an attachment. Opening it, revealing a GIF, Annabeth gasped in fear as she saw Thalia unconscious on the floor while the killer stood over her, waving at the camera as the words "Hunter turned hunted" flashed red. "Believe me now. It's okay, please don't hurt her." Annabeth pleaded, not wanting her friend to die. "I won't do it as long as you do what I say." Annabeth breathed shakily. She had two options. The first was to not do what the killer says, and Thalia dies, or do what he says, and Thalia stays safe. "Swear to Styx that you won't hurt him," Annabeth said. "I swear by the river Styx that I will not kill Thalia Grace, as long as you complete my task, which I give you word for word." Thunder rumbled in the sky, showing that the oath was taken. "What do you want me to do?" Annabeth asked. "There's a good girl. Now, here's what you need to do. At exactly midnight, go down to the docks and into warehouse 9. Inside, you'll find a package. Open it and you'll find 2 items and a note inside. The note will have further instructions." "That's it?" Annabeth said, having expected something more disturbing. "That's all. And then you let Thalia go." Annabeth said, wanting to make sure her friend was released after. "The little hunter will be returned alive. We'll talk later, Annie." With that, the killer hung up as Annabeth desperately tried to calm her rapidly beating heart. The killer had Thalia, and now she had to do as he said, or Thalia would pay the price. Later midnight. Naruto stood idly looking at the warehouse waiting for Annabeth to appear, taking out one of her disposable phones, dialing a number and waiting for the person to answer. "Acosta. Hello, yes, I'd like to report some suspicious activity in the warehouse district," Naruto said, making sure to disguise his voice. "What kind of suspicious activity?" "I saw a person sneaking into a warehouse, I'm not sure which one, they seem to be dragging large packages with them." Naruto replied with a smile. "Okay, stay where you are, the militia will be there soon to get a full report. Better hurry up before I see them coming back," Naruto said, hanging up and throwing away the phone as he watched Annabeth walk into warehouse 9. But Annabeth took a deep breath as she entered the warehouse and found it completely dark, aside from a single light bulb glowing above a brown package on the floor. Walking over to the package, Annabeth picked it up and opened it, paling when she saw a bloody knife and the killer's mask inside, along with a note. Grabbing the note, Annabeth unfolded it and saw what it said. "Put me down. Pick me up." Gulping at what the killer wanted, Annabeth grabbed the mask and placed it over her face before picking up the knife. "Okay, now what?" Annabeth muttered, feeling dirty wearing this mask. Then he noticed something else on the box. Looking, he saw more writing. "Smile for the camera." For a moment, Annabeth was confused before her eyes widened in realization. But it was too late when the warehouse lights came on and a camera began taking several pictures of Annabeth wearing the killer's mask and holding a bloody knife. But what caught Annabeth's attention were the 5 dead demigods hanging from their hands. It was at that moment that Annabeth realized the killer had set her up. Annabeth robotically pulled out her phone once it rang, knowing who it was. "Damn murderer, I never knew you had such a dark side. I wonder what your friends would think if they saw these beautiful pictures of you after brutally killing 5 demigods. You set yourself up." Annabeth hissed angrily. "Of course I did it, but who's going to believe you? You can't tell anyone. I mean, how are you going to explain finding 5 bodies no one else could, or having my mask and my knife? And you can't tell anyone about these secrets unless you want me to leave pieces of your family all over the United States. Face it, murderer, we're partners now. Also, you might want to get out of there, since I just saw the militia arrive, along with your little boyfriend." This made Annabeth pale, her anger replaced with fear of being caught like this. She quickly took off her mask, threw it and the knife away, and ran out of the warehouse. Then, Annabeth returned to the motel room, having prevented the militia members from searching the warehouse district and likely finding the bodies in warehouse number 9. It had just been one bad thing after another. First, the killer called her back and revealed he had Thalia. He set her up to look like his mate. He was probably the one who called the militia, and worst of all, he still had Thalia all. It made Annabeth want to cry, tears welling up in her eyes. Once she reached the room, she stopped to see a note pinned to the door, thinking Annabeth, gloating over the killer, tore it off without reading it and entered the room. She stopped when she saw Thalia lying on the couch, her chest rising slightly, showing that she was alive. Surprised and relieved to see her friend alive, Annabeth looked at the note. "It makes a deal." Relief flooded Annabeth that the killer had done what he'd said and brought Thalia back. Running to her, Annabeth knelt down and woke Thalia, wanting to make sure she was really alive. Thalia, please wake up," Annabeth said, as Thalia stirred a little before her eyes opened, much to Annabeth's relief. "Annie?" Thalia moaned, still disoriented, as Annabeth hugged her. "Thank the gods you're alive," Annabeth whispered as Thalia seemed to remember what happened. "Annabeth, the killer. I saw him, he attacked me, how did I get here?" Thalia said quickly. Okay, the important thing is that you're here now." Annabeth said, as Thalia began to shake. I actually thought I was going to die, and there was nothing I could have done about it, Thalia said softly, as Annabeth comforted her friend. For a moment, Annabeth was grateful that the killer kept his word, but that didn't calm the anger she felt for what he did to her friend, and she swore she would make him pay for everything he had done to her. Tomorrow. What did you say? Annabeth asked, paling rapidly. However, Percy didn't notice that he looked too proud. In the warehouse district, we found 5 other bodies. Not only did we find the killer's knife and mask, he must have been finishing up and got rid of them when he heard us coming. They just sent someone to the temple to try and find any fingerprints or DNA samples on the mask. We finally made a breakthrough and are one step closer to finding the psycho, Percy said, Thalia equally relieved after what happened with her encounter with the killer. The only one who wasn't relieved was Annabeth, knowing with certainty that the only fingerprints and DNA found on the knife and mask will be hers. In her haste to escape the warehouse, she had foolishly dropped the mask and knife. Now they are on their way to the temple. That's great, Percy, does that mean we're going back too? Annabeth asked, hoping she could get to the temple before the mask and knife and possibly steal and destroy them. Yeah, although Jake offered to let us stay a few more days to rest, said Percy. No. Annabeth shouted, surprising Percy, while Thalia looked at her in confusion. I mean, no. I just want to be back at the temple when we know who the killer is, to see if it could be someone we missed, and I might have missed an obvious lead, you know. Annabeth said nervously. Okay, I guess that makes sense, let's go. Percy said. Annabeth nodded, hoping they would arrive before the mask and knife. Time skipped 2 days. Annabeth couldn't deny the relief she felt upon entering her apartment. When they returned to the temple, they were greeted by Jason and Leo, worrying Annabeth that the mask and knife had arrived and been tested. But in fact, they were told that the truck transporting the knife and mask had been ambushed, that the guards and drivers had been killed, and that the mask and knife were missing. She already knew the killer was responsible, but she doubted he did it out of the goodness of his heart. He had a motive. Before she could continue that train of thought, her phone rang, and she stared at nothing in particular. What do you want? Annabeth demanded. Easy, assassin, there's no need to be so hostile, especially after I returned your little friend and cleaned up your mess with the knife and mask. After all, what kind of partner would I be if I didn't help you? Okay, first of all, we're not partners, you set me up, second of all, get this through that crazy little head of yours, stay away from me and my friends, stop calling me and leave me alone. I'm done with you. Annabeth snarled, hanging up before the killer could say anything. Instantly his phone vibrated with a message, and when he looked he saw it was from the killer. Then I'll find someone else to play with. Unknown location. Thalia groaned as she opened her eyes before closing them to the bright lights overhead. Slowly opening her eyes, Thalia tilted her head so she wasn't looking directly at the lights, before her eyes shot open when she realized she was lying on a metal surface with something on her arm. Lifting her head, Thalia's eyes widened as she saw that she was strapped to a metal table wearing a white dress instead of her usual attire, and realized with horror that someone had stripped her of her clothes. Swallowing the bile rising in her throat, Thalia looked down at her arm and saw an IV bag. Hyperventilating, Thalia tried to calm herself enough to create some electricity. But to her greatest horror, Thalia realized that she couldn't summon any lightning or wind, she couldn't use her powers. At that moment he heard a door open, so he looked around quickly trying to find it, but he couldn't. Hey. Who's there? Who are you? Thalia yelled, only getting a deep raspy breath in response and loud pounding footsteps. Soon, the assassin's masked face appeared in Thalia's sight, making her pale as she realized she had been captured. What are you going to do to me? Thalia said, afraid that he already did something to her while she was knocked out. In response, the killer brought a gloved finger to the masked mouth before pulling out a syringe and injecting it into the IV, as Thalia struggled with her restraints. No, keep that for me, I swear, said Thalia, feeling sleepy from what she injected into her. Before Thalia fell asleep, she felt the assassin caress her cheek. Chapter 3. 4 weeks. That's how long it's been since Annabeth told the killer to leave her and her friends alone, and things have gotten worse. After the Anima trip disaster, the number of bodies found has nearly tripled, and the killer now kills 10 to 15 demigods in each settlement. Annabeth couldn't help but feel guilty, thinking it was her fault that the murders increased because she was scolding the killer. Not only that, but with the murders increasing, the council started holding more sessions. Not all of them were mandatory to attend, which Annabeth was grateful for, but Percy went to every meeting and often stayed longer with the others to try and track down the killer, so they were lucky to see each other more than 3 times a week outside of meetings. The only good thing Annabeth could see from Anima's journey was that she and Thalia spent more time together, which the daughter of Athena appreciated, since they haven't had much time together after Gaia's defeat, with Annabeth designing the temple and Thalia as Artemis's lieutenant. But after being held captive by the killer, Thalia has spent more time near the temple than at the hunter's camp, leaving one of the older, more experienced hunters in charge, while Artemis was away. Annabeth just wished it didn't take one of them being kidnapped by a deranged killer to reconnect. Though another thing Annabeth noticed is that they haven't received any reports of any new murders in the last week, which is strange since the killer has never spent more than a few days on his murders. Annabeth shook off those thoughts and continued on her way to the temple for another meeting, one of the few she'd attended recently. As she drew closer, though, she saw a large crowd in front of the temple. As she got closer, Annabeth grew more curious. What could possibly be so interesting that it would attract such a large crowd? Pushing her way through the crowd, Annabeth soon made her way to the front, and when she saw what everyone was looking at, she gasped and covered her mouth in shock. At the front of the temple were 14 pillars, each bearing the image of one of the Olympians, as a token of gratitude for their help in building the nation of the demigods. But now each of the statues, each twice the size of the Athena Parthenos at 25 meters tall, had been desecrated. Each one was covered in red paint in shapes that made them want blood to spurt from their eyes, noses, ears, throats, and chests. They had insulting phrases painted on them, mostly those of various demigods, the most notable being a single word painted on Athena's head. Pitch. While on each statue there was a letter that spelled out a phrase. "S who's back?" No. Annabeth thought, frozen in terror. It can't be, he can't be here, he's never been near the temple, he can't be here. Up there. Someone shouted, pointing to the roof of the temple. Annabeth's eyes widened in horror at the sight of 14 demigods standing at the edge. As everyone scrambled to reach them and catch them, Annabeth stood still, knowing it was useless, as she saw something all the demigods had in common. He was right, as in sync, all the demigods descended from the ceiling, to everyone's collective horror, as it revealed the ropes around their necks. When the rope ran out, all the demigods heard the collective clicks that rang out as the bodies tumbled limply between the statues. He's here. Annabeth thought dazedly, ignoring the panicking demigods around her. Then. 14 demigods dead. Right here, in the heart of Mistral. Can anyone tell me how, in the name of the gods, the assassin even managed to get inside? Kai shouted, slamming his hands on the table. The patrol and the guards around the south entrance were found dead with their throats slit. Naiko replied. By the gods, what about the 14 who were hanged from the temple? Reina questioned. We're still not sure who they are, but from the matching facial features we can safely say they were all children of Athena. Piper replied. Annabeth froze, watching 14 of her siblings hang themselves, while the others discussed the murders and the possibility that the killer was still here. Annabeth knew what it really was. A message, sending her a message letting her know that even here in Mistral, one of the most heavily guarded demigod cities in the world, he could still get to her. It could easily have been one of the demigods on the temple roof, and Annabeth hated herself for being relieved it wasn't her. The curfew is established, and everyone is to stay indoors until we're certain the killers are no longer in Mistral. Jason finished, while Annabeth just listened. Okay, so whoever stays here at the temple will go out to find the killer. Any volunteer, Percy said, looking around. I'll stay at the temple. Annabeth said instantly, not wanting to risk running into the killer. I'll do it, said Thalia. Me too. Piper added. And me, said Hazelnut. Count me in. Leo offered. I'll stay, said Ambrose. Okay, Jason, Naiko, Kai, Reina, Frank, and I will go out and try to find the killer. Percy said, everyone nodding before leaving to get ready. Later at night with Kai. Kai walked through the northern district of Mistral, his head on a swivel, one hand gripping his katana ready to draw it at the slightest sound. While some would consider him paranoid for constantly carrying his weapon, even while sleeping and bathing, Kai learned long ago that, for a demigod, paranoia is what keeps him alive, always cautious, always suspicious, and most importantly, constant vigilance. Kai thought, drawing his sword when he saw a figure stumbling around a corner. Who are you? Reveal yourself. Kai demanded upon seeing the person wearing a hood and clutching his side. Oh, thank the gods. Please, please, you have to help me. This maniac came out of nowhere and stabbed me, please, he could come after me right now. We have to get out of here. He begged the now revealed girl to give him her voice. Although Kai didn't lower his sword even when he saw the blood. Not until you show me your face. Kai demanded. Are you kidding? There's a killer after me, and you won't help me unless you see my face. The girl sobbed in pain. I said show me your face, or I'll assume you're helping the killer and respond in kind. Kai said, taking a stance. The girl continued to sob in pain before the sobs turned into laughter. If you insist, the girl said, all traces of pain or fear disappearing, replaced by a seductive tone with a slight hiss. Before Kai could think, the woman raised her head and Kai made the mistake of looking into her eyes, and then he knew no more. With Frank. Frank walked slowly through the eastern district, bow at the ready. Well, he wouldn't admit it, even if only to himself, he was terrified for himself, his friends, and most of all Hazel. And why wouldn't he be when there was a lunatic killer on the loose, and now he's here in Mistral, having already killed more than a dozen demigods in less than a day. Anyone would be scared after that. But he wouldn't let it prove that Frank would fight this killer if he had to, if it meant protecting his friends and the girl he loved. Suddenly, Frank heard a sound, a low tapping in a corner, like small feet running across the floor. What? No one should be out this late, especially with a curfew in place. Frank thought, narrowing his eyes suspiciously. Raising his bow, he took a few deep breaths, pressing himself against the wall, before quickly knocking the arrow from the corner and saw nothing. There was nothing there. With a sigh of frustration and relief, Frank prepared to continue his patrol when he noticed something on the ground. Kneeling down, Frank frowned as he picked up the object and held it up to his eyes. Is this a web? Frank thought in confusion at how strange it didn't seem to come from any spider he knew. Suddenly, Frank was thrown into the air, gasping for air as a web rope was lowered around his throat before whoever was holding it tossed him into the air. Grabbing the rope, Frank tried to break it with his above-average strength but found the leash to be stronger. Deciding to transform into an animal, Frank tried to concentrate but soon realized, to his surprise and horror, that he couldn't transform. Before Frank was overcome by darkness, the last thing he saw was a pair of completely gray eyes with a black spiderweb pattern on them. Temple with Ambrose. Ambrose bowed his head in sadness, sensing that 2 council members would be eliminated, saying a brief prayer for both of them. Ambrose raised his head. So, after all this time, I'm not killed by a monster or defending my comrades, but by a demigod killer, Ambrose said, looking out the window overlooking the temple entrance and the still desecrated Olympian statues. While behind him, the assassin towered over the short old man, knife in hand. But before you do the deed, would you please an elder and tell me why cause such death and torment to innocent people who have done you no harm? Ambrose questioned. The killer tilted his head, contemplating whether to just kill the old man before deciding to humor him before he died. The killer pointed his knife at the statues of the Olympians, with Ambrose humming in response. Ah, I see you're like the young Castellan. No, you're different, you don't have misguided goals of dethroning the gods, you simply wish to destroy them, am I right? Let me guess from the little I know about you, you're cunning, intelligent, capable of creating plans for any situation, knowing how to stay hidden and cover your tracks, creating false trails to follow to lead your prey into a trap, and you've been planning this for years. Athena isn't you. Ambrose deduced. In response, the angry killer pulled Ambrose's head back and held the knife to his throat, while the old man laughed. I take it from your reaction, I'm right and you hate your mother, and here I thought it was the children of Hades who held a grudge. Very well then, do it, I accept my death. But no, this child, you will fail in your efforts, someone will rise up to stop you. Ambrose said looking into the assassin's masked eyes. The assassin said nothing before dragging his knife across Ambrose's throat, savoring it slowly as he watched a light leave his eyes before dropping the now dead demigod. No one can stop what's coming. The killer thought, taking out his phone and setting in motion the next phase of his plan. It's time to show little Annie why it's not wise to anger him. But Annabeth, Thalia and Piper. Annabeth, Thalia and Piper sat in the temple lobby waiting to hear from the other council members. Leo had gone to his workshop in an effort to distract himself, and Hazel went for a walk around the temple. How do you think he got in? The Piper asked. Easy, he walked in like he owned the place, Thalia said with a slight frown. It was as if the killer was mocking them, that no matter what defenses they set up, what contingency plans they had in place, they couldn't stop him. He was able to desecrate the Olympic statues and kidnap 14 demigods and make them commit suicide for the sake of Tartarus. Annabeth remained silent, trying to calm her nerves as she looked at every dark corner, as if she expected the killer to suddenly appear and kill them, which wouldn't be so surprising if she were honest. Suddenly a phone rang making Annabeth jump thinking it was hers. Sorry, that's mine. Thalia said, pulling out her phone and frowning when she saw who it was. Who is it? The bagpiper asked. It's Jason, I'm going to take this, he might need help. Thalia said, getting up and walking away before Annabeth or Piper could say anything. This is bad, this is really bad. Annabeth thought, her whole body shaking. That was weird, wasn't it? Jason needed help. No offense to Thalia, of course, but Jason isn't exactly a pushover. Piper said. Yeah, it's pretty loud, they all are. Hey, listen Piper, I'm going to get some fresh air for a bit, it's getting a little stuffy in here. Annabeth said, Piper nodding. Yeah, I'll definitely be here waiting to come back. Piper said, and Annabeth gave her a grateful look before heading for the exit. When Annabeth was out of sight, Piper's phone vibrated. She grabbed it and saw a message with an attachment. Opening it, Piper gasped in horror when she saw her father, beaten and bloody, tied up in the back of a car, with a picture that was a message. If you want your old man back in one piece, go back alone and don't bring a gun or tell anyone. That is unless you want your dear old dad to get pretty intimate with a sword. But Annabeth. Annabeth paced back and forth in front of the temple, breathing deeply. She still couldn't believe the killer was here. She half hoped this was all a bad dream. But she knew this was real, the killer was really here and he could be killing her friends right now for all she knew, and it was all her fault. If she had done what the killer asked, her friends would have been safe, but now they're all targets because she couldn't control her temper. Just then her phone rang, she shakily pulled it out and saw a DM from the killer. "Hello again, Annie." Annabeth flinched at the killer calling her Annie, a nickname she hated now that she was afraid of her, before sending a reply. "What do you want?" "It's not obvious, you didn't want to play, now I'm making you play. You'll be choosing who lives and who dies." "No, I would never do that and I won't play your sick game, monster." "Yes, you will or the next person I kill is your little toy." Annabeth just wanted to curl up and cry, now either she plays the assassin's game or Percy dies. Why does it have to be me?" Annabeth mentally cried. "Choose. The hunter or the lover." This made Annabeth's eyes widen, hunter or lover, Thalia or Piper. No, she can't choose between them. "No, please, don't make me choose, please. Either you choose or I tick the clocks." Annabeth shook herself violently, putting away her phone and trying to think rationally. Okay, I think Piper is still in the temple safe and she has her dagger with her. Thalia is with Jason. She thought Annabeth was noticing. Jason didn't call Thalia, the killer did. Without thinking, Annabeth ran down the temple steps and tried to find Thalia. "Thalia!" Annabeth shouted, hoping he would hear her. As Annabeth ran screaming Thalia's name, she didn't pay attention to where she was going and bumped into someone. Whoa, Annabeth, calm down," said a familiar voice. Looking over, Annabeth saw Percy looking at her with concern. Instantly, Annabeth quickly began recounting what had happened, pushing aside the killer's messages, unsure of what he would do if she told anyone. "Annabeth, calm down and speak slowly," Percy said, trying to get her to calm down. "Percy, you need to help quickly. Thalia is missing. I think the killer might have called her pretending to be Jason to lure her away," Annabeth said, surprising Percy. "Okay, let's get back to the temple quickly, make sure everyone's safe, and then we'll find Thalia, I promise," Percy said. Annabeth nodded shakily. Percy ran ahead of Annabeth, following her, but then he felt his phone vibrate with another message from the killer. "Time's up, choose." Annabeth took a shaky breath, unable to believe what she was about to do. "Don't hurt Thalia." For a moment he didn't respond, making Annabeth think she had failed before she got an answer. "As you wish." This took some of the weight off Annabeth's shoulders before she realized they had to hurry back to the temple to save Piper. With Piper rushed to the back of the temple looking for her father before seeing a black car a short distance away. "Father?" Piper said, running to the car and tried to look through the tinted window but couldn't see in the car, taking out her phone and sending a text to the killer. "I'm here, where's my dad and where are you?" "Right here." Hearing something, Piper turns and sees the killer standing behind her. The killer punches Piper in the face as the demigod straightens and backs away in fear before turning to run. "Help. Someone help me." Piper screamed, hoping someone would hear her as the killer slowly chased her. Running down an alley, Piper comes to a closed gate too high to fit through. Looking up, she blanches with fear as she sees the killer approaching her, his knife thumping against the fence posts. "SST, stay, be back," Piper said, trying to use her charm, but the killer kept coming towards her. "I said stay back," Piper repeated in a louder voice, as the killer didn't stop. "I said stay back, don't come any closer," Piper ordered, the assassin unaffected. Desperate to escape, Piper runs to an escape ladder and begins to climb it, the killer now hot on her trail after shaking off the spell. Piper continues to climb as she moans in pain, as the killer plunged a knife into her lower back before pulling it out and stabbing her again. Finally, the killer slashes the back of her leg, hitting a major artery and causing Piper to scream in pain. Piper manages to climb onto the roof and falls to her knees, clutching her leg as blood gushes from the cut. Piper tried to stand up and fell back, sobbing in pain. She crawled away before stopping at a skylight. Piper pulled out her phone and tried to call for help. "Piper, what's wrong, what's wrong?" "Gay Jason, he's H here, T the killer, T the temple, H here." Piper gasped. "What? Are you okay?" "I'll be there." "Duh, Jason, why you have to stop him, P please," Piper begged. "Don't talk like that, I'll be there soon and you'll be fine." "Duh, Jason, I love you," Piper said weakly. "No, Piper. You have to stay awake, damn it, why can't you fly?" "Jason," Piper whispered, dropping her phone. Piper. With Annabeth and Percy burst into the temple looking for someone. "I'll find the others, stay here," Percy said, running. Annabeth pulled out her phone and called Piper. Pick up, please pick up," Annabeth mentally begged before she heard anything. Looking around, Annabeth recognized it as Piper's ringtone, trying to find the source before feeling something drip onto her face. Lifting a hand, Annabeth felt something warm and sticky on her face, looking horrified to discover it was blood. Looking up, Annabeth's fear shot through the ceiling as she saw a body lying on the roof. Beginner. Annabeth shouted, running up and onto the roof. When she reached the roof, Annabeth covered her mouth, choking back a sob as she saw a trail of blood leading to Piper's motionless body. No, no, no. Annabeth begged, slowly approaching the body, seeing Piper's lifeless eyes. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to choose, I didn't mean to. Annabeth cried, falling to her knees. Although he then heard something hit the roof, when he looked he saw that it was a package with a note. I thought you might like something to remember me by. Looking into the box, Annabeth felt a new wave of tears when she saw that it was the knife and mask the killer had tricked her into wearing. Time skip 5 days. Annabeth curled up in her bed with a blank look on her tear-stained face. It had been 5 days since Piper, Ambrose, Kai, and Frank had died. Ambrose had been found with his throat slit, Kai had been turned to stone, and Frank had been found hanging by a web pierced through his chest with his fire stick. In a single night, 4 council members and 4 of the strongest living demigods were dead. And not only did they have a killer on the loose, but they were working with Medusa and Arachne if Kai was turned to stone and Frank was strung out in cobwebs. Everyone was hurt by their deaths. Hazel and Jason took it the hardest, with their boyfriend and girlfriend respectively being the ones who were killed, with Nico and Thalia being there for their siblings. But Annabeth felt worse knowing that it was her fault they were dead, even though logically she knew there was nothing she could have done to save them. She knew she was responsible for Piper's death, she had a choice, and now she had to live with the consequences. Sitting on the nightstand was the mask and knife the killer had left for her. Annabeth didn't care if anyone saw them, as she had locked herself in her room without letting anyone in, wanting to be alone. Annabeth looked at the mask and saw its hollow, misshapen black eyes staring back at her, mocking her. This is your fault. Annabeth muttered, looking at the mask. As Annabeth tried to destroy the mask with her gaze, she couldn't help but notice him writing on the leather straps. Grabbing the mask, Annabeth looked at the strap and saw strange black symbols on it. Running her thumb over them, Annabeth wondered if they had a magical origin. Her thoughts were interrupted, though, when she hissed at the sight of a cut on her finger, drawing blood. Blood dripped onto the marks, making them glow before she blew out a puff of smoke. Coughing, Annabeth shook off the smoke as she saw she now had a book in her lap. But not just any book, a demigod book that had pictures of every demigod from Camp Half-Blood and Camp Jupiter, like a yearbook. What, were those some kind of seal? Annabeth wondered before dropping the mask and grabbing the book. Opening the book, Annabeth noticed that some pictures were cut out the killer's victims, she realized. As she looked, Annabeth felt sick at how many pictures were missing for each demigod who was killed, gagging a little when she got to Piper and Frank's page. But she saw that her own picture was crossed out, along with words written in red. The answers are found where the mask was made. Where the mask was made. Annabeth thought, grabbing the mask. Looking at it for anything else, he soon found a label inside. Konoha Hospital Surgical Mask. Annabeth muttered in realization. He had thought the mask looked familiar, at least in design and material. It was a surgical mask. Mask specially designed to help those undergoing multiple facial surgeries prevent their faces from falling apart. If what the message said was true, the answers she was looking for would be found in this hospital. Of course, it could also be a trap. But that was a risk Annabeth was willing to take if it meant finding the answers she needed. One way or another, Annabeth would get her answers. Chapter 4. Bailey awoke with a start when she heard the door open, revealing the killer had returned. She strained her neck to try and see where he was, but he stayed out of her limited line of vision, but she could still hear his footsteps. Okay, asshole, you've had your fun, now let me out so I can kick your ass. Thalia yelled, putting on a brave front and looking in what she hoped was the killer's direction. Though in truth, Thalia was terrified. She didn't have her weapons, couldn't use her abilities, and was currently being held captive by a deranged killer. She didn't even know how long she'd been locked up, with no clock or windows to see outside, only the cold metal walls of the room. Thalia was even more terrified than when she was trapped in her tree. At least then she knew she was at Camp Half-Blood with her friends nearby, but now she didn't know where she was, and she was truly alone. Thalia screamed a little, and jumped or would have if she wasn't being held as the assassin slammed his hands down on either side of her head, his masked face looming over her. After a moment of staring, he patted her cheek and walked away. Thalia heard something roll on the floor before he stopped next to the table she was at. Thalia's eyes widened, and she paled when she saw a cart filled with different types of tools, including blades, syringes, and bottles of clear liquids. Before she could even think about what she would do with it, the killer threw something into the cart, and Thalia was shocked when she saw it was his mask. This could be her chance to see who the killer was, and if she could escape, she could return to her friends and tell them. Thalia watched as the killer appeared before her and finally saw what he looked like. Spiky, sun-kissed blonde hair, pale skin, 3 jagged whiskers on each cheek, and blue-gray eyes with slanted pupils. If the situation were different and they had met before Thalia joined the hunt, she would admit he was handsome in an animal-like way, with whiskers and boar-like pupils. Ah, it feels good to take that thing off, it gets hard to breathe after a while, the assassin commented before sorting through his tools. For a moment, nothing was said. Thalia stared at the assassin, wondering if she'd ever seen him before, and said assassin, deciding which tool to choose. The silence ended when Thalia spoke. You're a demigod, aren't you? He said as Thalia now sees familiar features, namely the blonde hair and grey eyes. That's obvious, huh, I never really understood why Athena's children were all blonde when the Hitch herself has black hair. Well, one could argue that they inherit the blonde from the father, and if the father isn't blonde, I find it strange. But yes, I am a demigod sadly. Said the assassin grabbing a syringe and a small bottle of the contents he put it into the syringe. What is tea that? Thalia questioned, more than a little terrified. Did you know that rattlesnakes are more dangerous than adults? It's because they haven't learned to control the amount of venom they secrete, the killer said, avoiding the question, with Thalia now worried about what he'd probably inject her with. I remember when I first found out about that, it was actually a dual learning session. It was 5 months after my 4th birthday, I met a woman, I never really knew her, I only saw her a few times around the village, but those few times I knew she was just like me, hated and alone, something to do with her former master being a traitor. When I first met her, I vaguely remember feeling something akin to happiness at finally having met someone like me. But you see there was one difference between us, while she hated me for being associated with her former master, I was hated for simply existing. Another was that she had people who cared about her, well I had no one, but you know how humans can be, they're selfish, petty creatures that only care about their own interests. So, tell me Thalia, what would you do to make people stop hating you? Asked the assassin. No answer. Well, I'll tell you, you just attack someone everyone hates more than you. That's what she did to me. She approached me under the guise of being my friend, while I was a naive child starved for affection. In return, she knocked me unconscious, tied me up, and threw me into a snake pit filled with hundreds of venomous snakes, all while she and dozens of villagers laughed at my pain as the snakes bit me and injected their venom into my blood. It took me 6 hours to untie it and another 7 to get out. I broke my nails on the way out and 5 ribs on the way back in. The killer said. While Thalia wasn't sure if this was true, it still horrified her that someone could do that to a child. You know what that experience taught me, because one is that snakes are useful creatures, especially poisonous ones. The second is that the only person I could trust was myself. I eventually got my revenge on the woman, but only after killing everyone she cared for, taking away her goal of revenge against her master, and showing her that no matter how she acted, who her friends were, if people trusted her, she would always be nothing more than a snake bore. The assassin said, preparing to plunge the syringe into Thalia's arm. No, 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 please don't do it. Thalia said. Don't worry, this won't kill you, I made sure of that, but you'll wish it did once it works its way through your system. If it's any consolation once this is over, you'll start to see things my way. The assassin said, injecting the poison into Thalia's arm. The screams that followed made Naruto smile evilly. But Annabeth. Are you sure this is it? Thalia said as she and Annabeth drove toward what looked like an abandoned hospital. Yes, this is Konoha Hospital. Annabeth replied. After receiving that message from the killer, Annabeth searched for the Konoha hospital where the mask was made. Well, there wasn't much information about it, only that it was an old hospital that had closed a few years earlier, ironically, it was located in Alaska. After getting a location, Annabeth had gone to talk to Thalia about the message and wanted to go with her, not wanting to risk running into the killer alone. Thalia agreed that she wanted revenge on the killer for when he lunged at her. So, Annabeth and Thalia had sneaked out to go to the hospital, and now here they were. Getting out of the car, Thalia grabbed a lever from the back seat, causing Annabeth to look in shock. Hey, what's that for? Annabeth asked. Well, a bow or spear wouldn't really work in narrow hallways, and last time I met that masked monster, he can apparently shrug off being stabbed, so I'm going a little old school. Thalia said. You wouldn't have anything else, would you? Annabeth said, while Thalia smiled. I've got you covered here, Thalia said, handing him a stun gun. Do you want to know why you have a stun gun? Annabeth said. Probably not. So, ready? Thalia questioned, Annabeth nodded slowly. As I always will be. Annabeth replied. With that, both girls entered the abandoned hospital, unaware that someone was watching them. This place is huge, Annabeth said in surprise. Maybe we should split up, Thalia offered, Annabeth pushing her a little in response. Hey, that's not even remotely funny, Annabeth said. Just a suggestion, Thalia defended. A bad one. Annabeth said. I'm just bothering you, said Thalia. They continued their search down a hallway before looking down and seeing a trail of dried blood on the floor. Oh, gods. Annabeth muttered. Keep going, Thalia said as she watched the trail pass through a door. Following the trail, Annabeth flinched when she heard a rattle. When they stood in front of the door, they saw the symbol of the killer's mask painted on it. He's been here, Annabeth said. What do you want to do? Thalia questioned, Annabeth breathing deeply. I want to find that son of a hitch. Annabeth replied. Me too. Said Thalia. They pushed open the door and saw a blood-stained tarp. Moving the tarp aside, they saw more tarps hanging, blocking the room. Pushing past the tarps, they stopped seeing something covered in a blood-stained sheet that was whizzing around it. Moving around it, they exchanged glances before nodding, and Thalia tore the sheet open. Under the sheet they saw a headless snake and an open owl carcass. Oh, gods, that's disgusting. Thalia said, covering her mouth, before Annabeth noticed something. The hearts are gone, Annabeth said, noticing the missing heart, while Thalia looked at her strangely. That's what the head looks like, Thalia said, pointing to where the head should be. Ugh, help me find the lights, Thalia said, looking away from the corpses. Looking, Annabeth found a light switch behind her, flipping it caused the screens lining the walls to come to life and display several X-rays. What the hell are these? Said Thalia. They look like X-rays of a patient. Annabeth replied looking at some. I can see that. I mean, why are they here? Wouldn't they have been taken when the hospital closed or something? Thalia clarified, while Annabeth examined the X-rays and found whose names were crossed out while taking some pictures to look at later. Yeah, you're right. In fact, look at the difference between the pictures and everything. They look almost new. If they'd been left here since the hospital closed, they would have shown some signs of pottery, Annabeth said before leaving silently. So, someone wanted us to find this. Why Annabeth? Thalia said when she didn't get an answer. Looking over, Thalia saw Annabeth silently staring at the X-rays, her eyes wide with horror. Annabeth, what's wrong? Thalia asked, Annabeth taking a breath. Thalia, look at the X-rays again. Look at the size of the bones. Annabeth said shakily, confusing Thalia. Looking at Thalia, she saw that the bones and skeleton were small, very small, as if it were a child. Thalia soon realized that she looked horrified. These X-rays were of a child, one who had been abused or even nearly murdered. Thalia joined Annabeth in staring at the screen in horror, noting the different injuries. You don't think this kid was a demigod, do you? Thalia said softly, the thought making Annabeth pale. Sure, she knew that not all demigods came from happy homes, some even ran away like her, and Thalia but Annabeth had never heard of any demigod being physically abused like this. It looked like some people tried to kill the poor boy several times. Wait, there's something else, Annabeth said, seeing another image at the end. As they got closer, they saw that it was an ultrasound of a pregnant woman. Look at the name, Kishina Uzumaki. I think she's the boy's mother. Thalia said, Annabeth thinking she'd heard that name before. Maybe, but wait, why cross out whoever's name they belong to, but leave the mother's name? Annabeth wondered, Thalia shrugged. Who knows what goes through the minds of lunatics? Said Thalia. Come on, there has to be more. Annabeth said as they moved toward the back of the room. They found several vials filled with different colored liquids, along with a dozen filing cabinets, along with evidence that someone had been staying there. Thalia opened a folder and flipped through it, while Annabeth walked over to one of the cabinets and pulled out a medical file, noticing once again that all the names were crossed out. Opening it, Annabeth began reading the report, though she soon wished she hadn't. Patient. Age. 1 year and 7 months. Male gender. Blood type. B. Injuries. Dislocated shoulders, cracked skull, left leg broken in 3 different places, puncture wounds to the left kidney and spinal cord. Annabeth covered her mouth in horror. This was it. This was horrible. Who would even think of doing this to a child? Quickly grabbing another file, Annabeth saw it was of the same boy, only now it was from when he was 2.5 years old. The wounds were even worse. High laughter file Annabeth read, and each one was worse than the last. All these files are for one person, Annabeth thought, covering her mouth. I think I'm going to be sick, Annabeth thought, struggling to keep her stomach from emptying. Annabeth, look at this. The mask the killer wears was custom made for this child after each of his surgeries. Thalia said. There's more than one. Annabeth said, which explains why the killer was so willing to give her one. Wait, the killer was the one who gave me one of those masks made specifically for this kid after his surgeries, so that would mean this kid is the killer. Annabeth realized. If it's true, and the killer was the boy who suffered all these injuries, these attempted murders, a part of Annabeth might understand why he is the way he is now. Not that it excuses the people he's killed. That's not all, look at this, Annabeth said, handing Thalia one of the files. When Thalia read the few that Annabeth had, the latter couldn't bear to read even a drawer full of them, resisting the urge to empty her stomach, while also finding out the same thing Annabeth had. So, this boy is our killer. Thalia said, feeling dizzy, while Annabeth nodded. But that's what I find strange, all of this, the hospital, the X-rays, these files. It just feels staged, Annabeth said. Well, this was probably a trap, but so far we haven't seen our masked friend. Let's look around a little longer before we get out of here, Thalia said before seeing several metal shelves. Over there. Walking over, the girls saw different objects with some in a metal cart. "This is Piper's necklace and Frank's bracelet," Thalia said, seeing the Piper's camp necklace and Frank's bracelet that Hazel gave her. "This is my necklace," Annabeth said, grabbing her necklace from camp that had gone missing a few weeks ago. The bastard had memories. Thalia snarled before seeing something above them, shining her flashlight upward. "Hey Annabeth," Thalia said, getting her attention. Looking over to where Thalia was, Annabeth saw dozens of photos hanging from the ceiling with string. "The missing photos," Annabeth declared. "And you're the star," Thalia added, seeing several photos of Annabeth. Suddenly, they heard the intercom system turn on and a haunting melody began to play. Daisy, give me your answer, do it, I'm half crazy all because of your love." "He's here," Annabeth said scared. "Come on, let's get out of here," Thalia said as they both ran out of the room and out of the hospital. Then, Annabeth stood in front of a new board that displayed all the photos she took at the hospital while holding a book. "Beginner's Guide to Being a Kikis by Kushina Uzumaki." It appeared in Cabin 6 a few years before she participated in Lightning Thief Quest, as at first most thought it was a prank by the Stoll brothers, but Annabeth, being the curious girl she was, couldn't resist and read it. Surprisingly, the information was incredibly accurate about how a real kunoichi worked, including stealth, espionage, assassination, how to craft ninja tools, and fighting techniques. When she first read it, Annabeth assumed it was written by a ninja-obsessed daughter of Athena, but with this new information, she wasn't sure. Annabeth now believed, perhaps, that Kushina Uzumaki was an alias her mother used when she had a demigod son. But that wouldn't explain the sonogram, since her mother was a virgin goddess and didn't bear children in the traditional way. Right? All of this just left Annabeth with more questions than answers. All she knew for sure was that the killer was abused and nearly murdered several times as a child, and something really bad must have happened for him to finally snap and become a killer. He was a demigod unaware of his heritage, but he discovered he hated not only his godly father, but demigods in general, and now all these murders were part of a larger revenge plot. Annabeth would say he was like Luke, only with the crazy dialed up to 11. And finally, Annabeth was sure that he was a son of Athena, given that Athena's demigod seemed to be the main target, with Annabeth being the main target of the assassins, since it is no secret that she was Athena's favorite daughter. At that moment her phone rang, Annabeth answered already knowing who it was. "What do you want?" Annabeth said. "I was just calling to see how my partner was doing, tell me if you liked the surprise I left for you and your little friend." "Yeah, it was really helpful, I learned a lot, bro," Annabeth replied. "Ah, I figured it out, I knew you would, you look a lot like the boar that way, and that's why I'm going to enjoy snapping you like a twig. You want to know something, at first I was terrified of you, and I'm sure I still am, but now I think you're pathetic," Annabeth said. "What did you just say?" "You heard me, you are pathetic. All these senseless murders, it's all one big tantrum, and just because mom didn't love you enough, you feel like taking it out on people who have never done anything to you. I read your files, I know what you went through as a kid, but that doesn't give you the right to kill innocent people, in fact, it makes you no better than the people who hurt you." Annabeth yelled at the end of her anger, making her temporarily forget who she was talking to. Though after a moment he calmed down and realized what he had just done, and Annabeth turned deathly pale. Not only did she yell at the killer, but she compared him to the same people who beat him half to death as a child, even she knew that was crossing a line that shouldn't be crossed. For a moment, the killer was silent, worrying Annabeth even more, before he finally spoke, more of a growl. "You little boar. Hitch. You don't just raise your voice at me. You have the bucking nerve to compare yourself to those worthless pieces of human garbage. That was a mistake, Annabeth, because no one, and I mean bucking no one, compares me to them," and walks away unscathed. "So, congratulations Annabeth, you not only damned yourself, but everyone you care about. I'm going to have the pleasure of massacring every single one of your families and delivering their heads to you. And Annabeth, don't think for one second just because you read some papers you understand a fraction of my pain, but believe me you will, oh you will." With that, the assassin hung up, and Annabeth felt her legs buckle under the tears falling from her eyes. "What have I done?" Annabeth thought. But Naruto was angry, without a doubt, he was blindingly furious. How dare she compare him to the villagers, the very people who set out to make him as miserable as possible. That he would never have a normal son, that he would always be reminded that no one would ever want him, that he was just a worthless demon. The last person who dared to do that wiped out his entire bloodline, brought them back to life, and killed them again. But sadly, he can't do that. He waited too long to scrap his entire plan because he couldn't control his temper, and this just means he has to speed up his schedule. Pounding his chest didn't create 3 clones. You go to Camp Jupiter and erase the 5th cohort, you go to the Amazons and turn them into a bad memory before mounting their heads on spikes, and you go to Manhattan and cut the lover of the sea gods and her husband into so many pieces that their own son won't recognize, and then scatter the remains in the Hudson River. Now. Naruto ordered, the clones nodding and disappearing into the shadows. Putting the mask over his face, Naruto disappeared into his own location. If the demigods thought he was bad before, he'll make sure they never sleep peacefully again after this. Chase residences. Naruto didn't bother sneaking in by simply breaking down the main door. He had already put up a barrier, silencing seals, and an illusion to make everyone ignore him. The moment the door fell and he let out his screams of fear, he walked over to see Annabeth's stepmother, father, and half-siblings. First, he appeared in front of the stepmother, plunging his knife into her mouth, causing the boys to scream in horror. Before they could even try to run, he reappeared behind them, grabbing one by the head and spinning him 180 degrees, before punching the other boy through his chest and grabbing his heart, which he ripped out. Finally, he grabbed Annabeth's father by the neck and slammed him against him. Why? The man choked. Naruto ran his knife across his cheek, leaving a shallow cut before lifting his mask. For certain victims, he allows them to see his face, wanting them to know exactly what their killer looked like. Your daughter did something she shouldn't have. This is me showing her what happens when I'm angry. Your family, they were the lucky ones because I killed them quickly, but you, I'll take my time tearing you apart. Naruto growled. For the next 5 hours, all that was heard in the house were Frederick Chase's screams of agony and Naruto's unhinged laughter. Time skip. Please, 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 gods, mom, whoever, please let me get there on time. Annabeth mentally begged, running through the streets of San Francisco, not caring who she bumped into. After the killer threatened her and her friends' loved ones, she immediately ran to the hangar, grabbed the fastest plane available, and flew to San Francisco as fast as she could, hoping to get to her family before the killer. Since she was the one who angered him, he'd likely go after her family first before anyone else, and Annabeth just hoped she'd reach them before the killer, and maybe even stop the killer on her own, said the Athena part of her that she quickly ignored, only caring about making sure her family was safe. Though when Annabeth arrived, she was greeted with something she'd only seen in her nightmares. The front door was broken, and walking in slowly, Annabeth covered her mouth to stifle her muffled sobs and keep from vomiting. There was his dead family, Matthew and Bobby hanging from their own entrails, his stepmother nailed to the wall, her head ripped off and shoved against his chest. But the worst was his father. All the skin below his neck had been ripped away, exposing angry red muscles. Each of his ribs was broken and stabbed into his arms and legs. His organs were ripped out and arranged around him in a macabre display, and finally his eyes and tongue were cut out and placed in his empty chest cavity. Not only that, but a message written in blood was on his corpse. I warned you. The sight drove Annabeth crazy, and she fell to her knees against the wall, sobbing. No, 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 no. Please, this can't be happening. Please don't let this be happening. Annabeth begged. She didn't even need to know that the same thing had already happened to her friends' families, and it was all her fault. Why couldn't she have kept her mouth shut? This wouldn't have happened. Please let this be over. Annabeth thought. Chapter 5. Athena sat on her temple, rubbing her head. She had just returned from a meeting where all the Olympians were informed of the assassins' most recent attacks. Yes, the Olympians were aware of the attacks on the settlements and demigods, but they couldn't interfere due to ancient laws, no matter how much many of the gods wanted to do so, given that their children were being murdered left and right. The most recent attack had caused a massive uproar, with Poseidon caught between anger and despair over Sally Jackson's death and the remains being dumped on his domain, Ares over the total destruction of the Amazons, and finally, the destruction of the fifth cohort, which Athena would destroy. He wouldn't admit it, but he took a vicious pleasure in the deaths that still held a grudge against the Romans. Not to mention Frederick Chase and his wife and children. Although Athena was saddened that her daughter's father had died, she was more focused on the reason behind these large numbers of deaths. Seriously, you're not even going to comfort Annabeth when she just lost her entire family, or even shed a tear. Boy, I knew you were a cold hitch, but I didn't know you were this cold. A voice in Athena's head said, causing the goddess to groan in annoyance. What do you want? I thought I got rid of you. Athena thought. Nope, I just didn't feel like talking to a hitch, and since you're literally the only person I chose to stay quiet. The voice said. You would do well to show me due respect, he demanded of Athena mentally. Or what, you're going to kill me? I'm already dead, Hitch. How about you turn me into a monster? That seems to be your answer to everyone you think deserves it. The voice growled. No, but I can erase you from my mind completely, and you would cease to exist, Athena threatened, the voice laughing mockingly. Yeah, right, if you could do that, you'd have the minute I appeared, and even if you could, you wouldn't, since your pride wouldn't allow you to erase even the slightest bit of knowledge you have, including me. Mocking the voice, Athena growled softly, knowing the voice was not only right, but gave a logical explanation. Which I expected, considering the voice was hers, or at least a different version of her. Maybe, but that doesn't mean I can't just ignore you, Kushina. Athena thought. Then I'll have to speak up. Kushina shouted from her little corner in Athena's mind. Athena groaned in frustration as she remembered how the cursed woman came to exist. It had started with Aphrodite giving one of her useless love is the greatest thing in the world speeches to Athena and Artemis, who ignored her, and the latter had just returned to her hunters, leaving the goddess of war to deal with Aphrodite. Athena had simply ignored her, so Aphrodite changed tactics and started mocking Athena's lovers by saying that none of them truly loved her since her children were born by joining her mind with mortal men. Aphrodite went on to say that she could never make a man truly fall in love with her, and Athena took this as a slight to her pride and said that she could make a man fall in love with her. This led to both goddesses making a bet that if Athena could get a mortal man to love her for herself, Aphrodite would not bother her or Artemis for 2 years, but if Athena could not get a man to love her, then she would have to give up her virginity to a man of Aphrodite's choosing. No one who backed down from a challenge Athena accepted only realized the consequences after the bet was made. So, Athena used a loophole in the bet that she would be reborn as a mortal, so technically it was still her, but also not. But she also couldn't disappear for who knows how long to live a mortal life, so she simply split her presence with the split half by going to the elemental countries to be reborn as a mortal, i.e., as Kushina Uzumaki. Over 20 years later, in the elemental countries, which was only a few months on Earth, Athena had regained all of her memories of her mortal half and smugly told Aphrodite that she not only got a man to love her, but he also fathered a real son with her. So, Athena enjoyed 2 years without being bothered by Aphrodite, which she had considered to be her mortal half suddenly resurfacing. It shouldn't have been possible, as she should have simply vanished, but instead she was very much alive. Instead, Kushina was very much alive and even attempted to take control of Athena's body to return to her son. But Athena had remained in control and instead forced Kushina back into a corner of her mind where she would hopefully disappear. Sadly, Kushina remained very much alive, and since she couldn't take control, she began to taunt and insult Athena whenever she could, making it so the goddess could never focus on anything. In fact, Kushina was the real reason Athena actually brought Naruto, preferring him to stay in the village his father died protecting, perhaps even become the leader like Minato, to Earth in the hopes that he would finally shut up now that he was around. It had the opposite effect and Kushina was even angrier. But recently Kushina had remained silent, which Athena was grateful for, but now she's back and even more annoying, as surprising as that is. Thinking about it, Athena couldn't help but wonder where Naruto was, since he never went to Camp Half-Blood and no one had seen him since she brought him to Earth. She could only assume that he had found a way back to the elemental countries on his own and was therefore choosing to focus on more important things. Unknown to Athena, Kushina had a smile on her face. While she couldn't take control of Athena's body, she still had access to all of her senses and her own sensory abilities. So, Kushina knew that Naruto was in fact still on Earth and that he was the one killing demigods, as she could also sense the demigods' unique energy signatures and whenever one of them dies, Naruto is there. Not that she would ever tell this to Athena, while Kushina, trapped in her own head, had gone through all the information she had access to and was honestly disgusted with these so-called gods. Murdering, raping, destroying entire cities, turning innocent people into monsters, Kushina honestly thought these gods were worse than the titans before them, with the sole exception of the goddess Hestia, who literally doesn't have a bad bone in her. The ones Kushina hated the most were the king, the queen, and Athena. Zeus is similar to, but not worse than, his own father Kronos, being paranoid, power-hungry, swallowing his first wife Metis, and seducing or raping any woman who catches his eye. Come to think of it, definitely worse than Kronos. Kushina thought that she hadn't found any information about Kronos cheating on his wife or raping any women. It's a little sad that the man who swallowed his own children was faithful to his wife, while his children can't seem to keep him in their pants. Hera was a particularly hated Kushina for the simple fact that she's a petty hitch, cursing or killing all of Zeus's demigod children and their mothers, even when they're innocent and never did anything. And that she threw her own son off Olympus because he was ugly. A mother is supposed to love and support her children, not try to kill them just because of how they look. Why doesn't she divorce him if she hates him cheating so much? Kushina thought, since if she found out that Minato had flirted with another woman, she would leave him fast enough to make his head spin after castrating him with a rusty spoon. Him condemning his son to a life as a Jinchuriki would have ended the same way, only he was very much dead. Athena was self-explanatory, she had abandoned her Neri-chan, leaving him in a village that Kushina knew would hate him. Other reasons included Medusa, a priestess of Athena, and Arachne, a very talented weaver, both innocent women turned into monsters. Medusa was with Poseidon in Athena's temple, and Athena cursed her and turned her into a monster. While Arachne was a talented weaver from a small village, famous for creating masterpieces, though she was arrogant, believing she was better than Athena herself, Athena challenged Arachne to a weaving contest, in which Athena depicted the gods in all their glory, with the mortals worshipping them, while Arachne showed the gods' flaws. Arachne won the contest, but Athena flew into a rage and destroyed Arachne's tapestry and turned her into a monster. Funny how being trapped in a goddess's head can reveal facts out of fiction. He thought Kushina had figured out what really happened, rather than the bullshit stories told by gods and mortals. In fact, Medusa was not Poseidon's lover, but rather a victim in the sea god's revenge against Athena. What really happened was that Poseidon, bitter over losing Athens to Athena, attempted to seduce Medusa, Athena's priestess at the time, but when she didn't fall in love with him, Poseidon raped her in Athena's temple before leaving her. Instead of comforting his priestess, Athena turned her into a monster. Arachne was a poor orphan girl who had lost her family and had no friends or money, and she made tapestries as a way to support herself, and because she loved to weave. She wasn't arrogant in her skills and was quite humble because people loved her work so much. Athena being jealous and challenging Arachne is pretty much the same, along with the tapestries they made. Although Arachne knew that the moment Athena arrived, whether she won or lost, she would still die, knowing how petty the gods were, though the girl chose to do her best and made the tapestry that depicted the gods as they were, arrogant and petty. Arachne had still won the contest, but she knew she would still die and held her head up in an act of defiance, even when Athena destroyed her work, but instead of dying because she thought Athena turned Arachne into a monster. The only true thing Kushina could truly see was the deep hatred Medusa and Arachne had for Athena for what she had done to them, targeting the children of the goddesses in retaliation. Their stories were only the way they were because mortals didn't want to risk the same fate or worse by speaking the truth and instead cast the victims in a bad light, while the gods came away squeaky clean. Although Kushina knew that the god's time was limited. Another thing Kushina had been doing for years while trapped in Athena's head was siphoning off the goddess's power and empowering herself. She had to do this slowly and continue acting as nothing more than a powerless voice in Athena's head, but she knew early on that she could wrest control away from Athena. So, eventually, Kushina was able to find her son and beg her forgiveness for not being there to raise him like she should have. "Oh, with luck I'll be able to get my own body." Kushina thought about wanting her own body and not having anything to do with Athena. Plus, he has a few decades of revenge, he wanted to get back to the wise hitch. Naruto's hideout. Tanaka coughed and spluttered as ice-cold water splashed in her face, waking her from her forced sleep and ruining her makeup. "What the hell, where am I?" Drew yelled, looking around. Instead of being in his cabin, it was a wet-looking place. Not only that, but she was tied to a chair restricting her arms and legs. "I swear if you're doing this you better get out now or you'll regret it." Drew yelled, thinking that his brothers were doing this since he finally got his position as head counselor after that stupid hitch piper got herself killed. What, she never liked McLean and she thinks she got what she deserved. Plus, now she's back as head counselor, forcing her brothers to do her bidding. Drew was suddenly brought out of her thoughts when she heard footsteps and something dragging on the floor. Looking over, she saw Naruto in his killer outfit without his mask, dragging something behind him. Assuming he was the one who tied her up, Drew put on a dazzling smile. "Oh, baby, if you let me, I'll make it worth your while," Drew said, using his charm and winking suggestively. Although she really planned to get revenge on him, even if he wasn't that bad, maybe she would keep him as a toy. "Your sister's charm language was stronger and it didn't work, what makes you think yours will?" Naruto said. Drew instantly paled. While she wasn't the smartest person, she was smart enough to realize he was the killer and was immune to the charm. What are you going to do?" Drew stammered, his confidence gone. He paled even further when Naruto lifted the object behind him, revealing it to be a giant mace, and rested it on his shoulder. "Oh, not much for me. Just take this mallet and smash your skull like a melon." Naruto replied casually, as if he were talking about the weather. This answer made Drew burst into tears, he didn't want to die. "Though there is a way out of this without me killing you," Naruto continued walking. "What, I'll do anything, anything." Drew said, looking at her body, thinking that's what she wanted. Good, because you have something I need." "I want the videos," said Naruto. What videos ahh? Drew yelled as Naruto swung the hammer and barely missed his head. "Oops, my arm slipped. And I think you know what videos I'm talking about," Naruto said, taking a few practice swings. Oh, those videos," Drew said, knowing what videos he's talking about now. "Yeah, those videos, where are they?" Naruto asked. "I'll tell you where they are, but only if you swear to me that you'll let me go," Drew said. Naruto stopped in mid-step as if contemplating her request. Faster than Drew could see, Naruto raised the mace and smashed it into his hand. Hey. That was a warning, next time it'll be a leg. "Don't tell me, where are the videos?" Naruto yelled. "Okay, I'll tell you, please don't hurt me," Drew begged, Naruto grinning. "Now you see that it was so difficult." "Where?" said Naruto. "On my mattress in my mom's cabin. Now, please let me go." Drew moaned pleadingly, while Naruto laughed darkly. Ho, who said I'd let you go?" Naruto said mockingly. "You said you would," Drew yelled before Naruto backhanded him. "First, don't raise your voice at me. Second, I said I wouldn't kill you, that I wouldn't let you go. I also didn't say I wouldn't hurt you," Naruto said with a crazy grin on his face as he raised his hammer again, this time bringing it down on his kneecap. "But Annabeth." Annabeth sat against the wall with her legs tucked up to her chest, her eyes red and tears streaming down her face. The reason was the council meeting that took place yesterday. Flashback. Who was it? Jason yelled, slamming his hands on the table, surprising most members with the normal calmness of Jason's anger. The only one who didn't react was Percy, who didn't even flinch, having been like that since the news of his mother and stepfather's death. Who was what, Jason? Thalia asked, still in shock from Jason's outburst. This attack wasn't just random or planned, this was personal. The killer targeted friends and family of council members. That can only mean someone on the council angered the killer enough to do this. So, I'll go back and say who was what. Jason demanded, looking at everyone suspiciously, even Thalia. Annabeth was sweating nervously. What was she supposed to do to tell everyone that it was her fault that their friends and family were dead? She looked over to see everyone looking at each other suspiciously, not knowing whose fault it was, then she noticed Thalia was about to stand up, and her eyes widened. No. I won't let Thalia take the fall for my mistake. Annabeth thought. It was me. Annabeth said, shooting up from her seat, discreetly shaking her head at Thalia. Explain now. Jason said with a glare, making Annabeth flinch, since all the attention was now on her. IW was aft after the Kai killer attacked the T-Temple. He has sent me a B-book of all the demigods He Kai killed and messaged me of W where I see could get an answers. This was his retaliation. Annabeth stammered, seeing more glances directed her way, while Thalia looked at her in surprise that she didn't mention her help. Percy shot out of his chair hard enough to knock it over and ran out of the council room, slamming the door behind him. Annabeth quickly got up and ran after him. Percy, please wait. Annabeth said, but he wouldn't listen and kept walking. Please let me explain. Annabeth begged, running in front of him. What is there to explain, Annabeth? You kept this to yourself and look what happened, the 5th cohort, the Amazons, my mother are all dead now. Percy yelled. Annabeth flinched at the anger, pain, and betrayal in his voice. What, you're sorry, that won't change anything, it won't bring back everyone who was killed, it won't fix anything. Percy yelled, tears streaming down his face. We're done. Percy said, Annabeth staring at him in shock. What? Annabeth said, hoping she had heard wrong. We're done, over, I'm going to leave you. I could have forgiven you for keeping the information to yourself, but this, no. Percy said, walking past a frozen Annabeth. Flashback ends. Annabeth was subsequently summoned back to the council chambers and told that she was not only off the case to find the killer, but also off the council. She then returned to her apartment to find that Percy had already come and taken all of her things and left. Now she felt numb after a few hours of crying. She just sat in her room, all her friends had turned their backs on her except Thalia, who came to check on her, and the killer had gotten what he wanted. All of her. As if on cue, her phone rang and Annabeth already knew who it was. What do you want? Annabeth said in a dead tone. But brother can't make sure his sister is okay. Watch out, Annabeth. You might hurt my feelings, and we both know what happens when someone hurts my feelings. You shouldn't be celebrating, you finally got what you wanted, everyone turned their backs on me, they blame me for what happened. Annabeth said. I don't know why you're upset. You should be thanking me. After all, now that you don't have the baggage of being a council member or dating Jackson, you finally see how everyone truly sees you, instead of hiding behind a mask of kindness. Besides, you saw how quickly everyone blamed you for what happened, but honestly, I planned on killing all those people anyway. You pissing me off only sped up my agenda. Yet everyone was so quick to push the blame all the way onto you. What's your point? Annabeth asked. My point, dear sister, is that no matter what you do, despite everything you've done, the people you help, the moment you fail to live up to their expectations, they will turn their backs on you and treat you like the monsters they kill. Humans, gods, titans, they're all the same, they just look out for themselves and trample on anyone who gets in their way. Before Annabeth could say anything, she heard something in the background. What's that noise? Annabeth said. What a noise. That noise in the background, where are you? Annabeth said, standing up. Ah, that noise. Well, since I'm feeling generous, I'm currently setting a trap for a very dangerous monster. Have I ever told you about monsters, Annabeth? There are many kinds of monsters in this world, monsters that won't appear themselves and cause trouble, monsters that kidnap children, monsters that devour dreams, monsters that suck blood, and monsters that always tell lies. Lying monsters are a real pain. They're much more cunning than other monsters. They pass themselves off as humans even though they don't understand the human heart. They eat even though they've never been hungry. They study even though they have no interest in academics. They seek friendship even though they don't know how to love. So what monster are you hunting? Annabeth asked, more than a little nervous about his answer. Instead of telling you, what if I show you? Annabeth held up her phone showing that it was being streamed live, covering her mouth when she saw it was the hunter's camp. The camera panned out showing the killer greeting Annabeth before moving to show the tree, with a bomb strapped to it. I have to say, when I first learned about these hunters, I was confused at the prospect of being a kid for eternity and being forced to hunt monsters. I mean, the immortality part sound cool, but you could still die, not to mention staying a kid forever. What exactly are they supposed to do if they're fighting a bigger, stronger opponent? Not only that, but what about the people they leave behind? Well, I'm sure some of them had lives they'd like to leave behind. What about the ones who have people who care about them, worried about where they are, not knowing if they're alive or dead? Really, it's selfish to choose your own desires over the people who care about them, along with those who are manipulated into joining in on your child abduction practice. And I am called the monster. What are you doing? Annabeth said, fearful but relieved that Thalia was still at the temple. Don't worry, I'm not going to kill any of them, I already have someone who will do it for me. No, I'm simply setting a trap for a monster. Can you guess the type of monster I am? Trapping Annabeth. Annabeth paced back and forth trying to think about what the killer said about the different types of monsters, and he's at Hunter's camp. Monsters that kidnap children. Practically kidnapping children. Annabeth stopped walking as her eyes widened in shock. Artemis. Annabeth whispered. Ding, 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 we have a winner. Yes, I'm going to capture a goddess. Why, what did she do to you? Annabeth said. It's not what she did, it's her slutty sister. You see, Annabeth, I want to hurt our slutty mother in every sense of the word. Me capturing her favorite sister just happens to fall into that category, and what better way to draw the slayer than to target her precious hunters? It won't work, she'll be able to stop you. Annabeth replied. You'd be surprised at the mistake someone can make when driven by anger and revenge. I think trying to blow her hunters into a few million pieces will be enough to piss her off. Here's how I see it. I go downstairs, set off these explosives I planted around the camp, the huntress finds out, comes down here, chases me, I lead her on a wild goose chase, into a trap I set ahead of time, and then I get a new playmate. Why are you telling me all this when you say I won't tell anyone? Annabeth said. Who's going to believe you? All your so-called friends have turned their backs on you, your stabbed happy friend would never make it in time, and I finally flipped the switch. Annabeth's eyes widened as she heard several explosions followed by screams. Nothing beats the sound of screams of terror and fear. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a goddess to capture and break, wish me luck. The killer then hung up as Annabeth's phone fell out of his hands. Then. Artemis was beyond angry, she quickly learned that whoever was out killing demigods had just attacked her hunters. When informed of this, the goddess quickly teleported back to her hunter's camp and, after ensuring that no one was seriously injured, left to pursue the killer and hopefully tear him apart or turn him into a jackalope and feed him to her hounds. Artemis had managed to find the killer, but he proved able to avoid her, but she managed to keep him in sight. When Artemis got close enough, she shot an arrow that knocked off the assassin's head, but was shocked when he simply disappeared in a puff of smoke before another assassin appeared and she ran after him. The goddess could only guess that the assassin knew a form of magic that allowed him to create copies of himself and had been hunting down and destroying these copies for some hours. If Artemis had been in her right mind, she would have noticed that the clone seemed to be leading her somewhere. Sadly, all Artemis had on her mind was finding the real killer and making him suffer for daring to attack her hunters. You know, if it makes you feel better, I didn't kill any of your henchmen, the assassin's voice echoed throughout the forest. I'm going to make you regret ever listening to my hunters, do you hear me? Artemis shouted, firing another copy, earning a mocking laugh in response. You'll have to forgive me if I'm not afraid of empty threats. I mean, how can you make me repent if you can't even find me? The assassin mocked. I'll find you, and when I do. What you're going to do is turn me into a jackalope, maybe have your mutts tear me apart, how about shooting me with arrows? I swear you need new material, it's the same if God kills or hits anyone who breathes in your direction the wrong way. The killer said. You? Artemis growled. I mean, if you need advice on how to threaten someone, I'd be more than willing to help you. Here, I'll even give you this one free of charge. Once I get my hands on you, I will break your mind, body, and spirit. I will make you watch as I kill each and every one of your hunters. When I'm done with you, huntress, you will be nothing but my loyal slave, and I will always savor the look on your family's faces when they see what I've done to you. That's how you threaten someone. Said the assassin. Artemis would deny it, but she actually felt a little scared by what the assassin said. That will never happen, because I'm going to kill her now. Artemis said, looking around when she saw no more clones. Ahahahaha, how can you kill me when you don't even realize you've fallen into a trap? The assassin said, causing Artemis's eyes to widen in shock. Before she could react, a four-sided crimson barrier rose around her and Artemis felt herself weaken, soon realizing with horror that she could sense none of her divine power. Four red yang formation, combined with suppression seals designed to suppress the power of a god. Right now you are as defenseless as any human, said the assassin, stepping out from behind a tree outside the barrier. How? Artemis said weakly. What can I say? I have friends who would like nothing more than to see you gods brought to your knees, and I'm more than willing to oblige. Now do me a favor and be unconscious. The assassin said with a hand signal as Artemis screamed in pain from the crimson electricity that struck her before falling unconscious. The assassin walked toward Artemis as an opening appeared in the barrier before it closed. Crouching down, Naruto patted Artemis on the head, pleased that another part of his plan had come together perfectly. I love it when the bad guy wins. Naruto thought. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.